Punk Rock Elite, a podcast about NoFX. Let's get Red and Eddie to rumble.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's all right, isn't it? I don't
Yeah.
know about wrestling, but our guest today is a wrestling fan. How are you, Red?
I'm very well, thank you, Eddie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, pleased. Very, very pleased. We've got a friend of ours on the show today to interview. That's the exciting thing.
Absolutely. It's like the G7 summit of non-binary comedians with alternative tastes in music.
It is. I'm just remembering one person who'll be furious that they weren't included in that.
Andrew O'Neill.
Yes, we're very sorry, Andrew, but I did ask Andrew if they liked NoFX, and they said no, I don't like NoFX.
Has met Fat Mike though.
They have. They had lunch together. And
yes, I believe so. Yes,
and the Fat Mike and Andrew have had lunch together at a festival, I would imagine, one of the music festivals where NoFX was playing. Andrew said that Mike is lovely.
Yes, I spoke to them, and they've always said that whilst they don't enjoy the music of NoFX, Fat Mike is lovely to hang around with.
And that is a very, very nice thing to hear, because Mike is divisive, as we'll come into this one. But yes, so what have you been up to this week?
Oh, what have I been up to this week? I've been doing some live streams actually on Twitch. I've been playing Gotham Knights, so I've been patrolling the streets of Gotham, keeping them safe.
How is? I've not played that one.
It's really good. I mean, it's the latest one, so it's not got Batman in. It's just got the Bat family. So, you know, Batgirl, Red Hood, Nightwing, Robin. And it's pretty good. My understanding was that on release it wasn't very good, but they fixed the bugs now and it's quite cheap.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have a look because I love the Bat fam. Big Bat fam fan.
Yeah, what a
guy. And so yes, I understand spoilers, but in the opening animation cinematic, you get the death of Batman, one of the many now, and yeah, it's nice. Some of the later Arkham games where you got to briefly control someone who wasn't Batman. You got Catwoman. Did you get? I think
got Red Hood in one of them.
Or was that just in the training simulators?
Oh, maybe it was.
I think you could do that. I think there was a later one where maybe you could be Nightwing or something, but. Or you could play Azrael in one of them.
Oh, cool! Really?
In those little, just in a little side. Basically, you'd go around, and then there were sort of these very high up places where there would be a burning bat logo on the floor, and Azrael would be kneeling there.
And I think it's quite a good idea that they've because they've done so many of these Batman games. I actually think it's quite brave and clever for them to go, we're going to kill him off for this one, so you can play as other characters.
Yes, I've read comics before, quite a lot of them, and I'm not sure how permanent death is in any of them.
I mean, there's a Lazarus pit. I mean, I'm kind of expecting him to come back at the end anyway.
That's what I was thinking. I wouldn't like to say either way, but if he did turn up, I'd just go, oh, yeah. All right.
Batman's back.
Yeah, because whoever kills him at the beginning, I can't remember, who is it?
It's Ra's al Ghul.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So just because I was thinking
he kind of kills himself. He explodes the Batcave with him in, but it is to defeat Ra's al Ghul.
Right. Because I would imagine that Talia or the League of Assassins or someone will just scoop up whatever matter they can find, dump it in a Lazarus pit, and then both Ra's al Ghul and Batman will just wander out of it, or a revolting hybrid. Fingers crossed. Someone make Clayface look over and go, ugh. So yeah, well, that sounds like fun. Yeah, I'll probably try that out. I finally got around to playing the last Tomb Raider game in the most recent trilogy.
Oh yeah.
Because I heard it was a bit of a step backwards from, was it Rise? Because there was the first, I heard it was a bit of a step backwards in a few ways, But again, I think the bugginess they've managed to patch. I mean, you'd think they'd just do that before releasing it, but
yeah, it's annoying, isn't it?
It's a bit like, well, the thing is, right, is that I don't know if you've heard about the production story behind Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Oh right, yeah.
It's too long to go into now, but it was essentially they said we're going to make one. They said all right then, but the contract stipulated it had to be released on the day that it was released, and it just snowballed. People left the project. Gene Roddenberry just intercepted every draft of every script and rewrote it before handing it to the studio. So people were going to the writers, "What? This is dog shit." They go, "That isn't my script," and and so people left. Nimoy wasn't going to be on board to do it, so they invented a new Vulcan. And then Nimoy said, "No, I will do it." So they kicked up that guy. And so the guy who was going to play the new Vulcan got like a bit part. And all of this, it was just an absolute... But they managed to, on that day, have the premiere of Star Trek: The Motion Picture and go, "Look, that is a complete film. Look, we did it." That you don't have to come back later and go, "Oh, here's that scene that we're just going to upload into it." You know, it's... So yeah, people, because it can be fixed afterwards, people are a bit slack about that shit, which is very irritating. It's all down to money. I'm sure the programmers don't go, "Oh, fuck it, we'll just do it later." It's just because they go, "We need to release it now." Anyway,
yeah.
I think because we cover so much, I say Will covers a lot of ground.
They're a wonderful comedian because they're just someone who, like, you wind them up and you just let them go. They've got such a bountiful fountain of knowledge about. So, I mean, I'd go as far to refer to them as like a historian. You know, like they harbor so much knowledge of like certain subcultures and alternative histories, things that you aren't going to get a documentary on BBC iPlayer about. But you know, I want to hear about Saturday morning wrestling.
Why Will has not been a frequent talking head in these I Love 19 whatever is astounding to me.
That's a really good point, because those are the perfect vehicles for them. I think, like, I suppose those kind of like fell out of favor whilst Will was experiencing their sort of like popularity back when they won Best Newcomer at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yes, they did. An award that may well not happen ever again.
Oh yeah.
Just recently we found out that the poor little Finch, or poor little Edinburgh Finch, all of the awards for the best new clever, oh no, not got any money for it. I don't know where all that fucking money's gone. But apparently they can't spare 200 grand, which is what they're asking for. Now that sounds like a lot of money. If you knew just how much money the Edinburgh Fringe Society rakes in from people, the fact they can't find that to spend on some sort of bauble for, you know, whichever act they've decided is going to win the award before the bloody festival starts.
Well, they've actually also, the Edinburgh Fringe has just been awarded £8.6 million by the British government. So the idea that they can't run the awards because they cost something like 250k or something.
Yeah,
but you've just been given 8 million.
Yeah, and that's not to even start on the hundreds that it takes to register a show if you want to put that in their outmoded non-digital book.
But they have got an app.
Oh, finally. Anyway, sorry, that's a lot of inside baseball for people who are not comedians there. Will is an award-winning comedian and, punk rock historian, or just subculture historian. Will is someone who has been, as you'll hear, they've been a part of a lot of subcultures.
Yes.
And their interest and sort of passion for those things is infectious and absolutely captivating. So this is a great episode. Hands up, we've already recorded the interview. We're recording this intro afterwards. But yeah, absolutely wonderful. So I think we should just jump straight in. I've done my worst thing. We've been talking for like 10 minutes. Just jump straight in. Let's go and do the interview now. We'll see you on the other side. And that's happening right now. We're here with Wil Hodgson. Hi, Wil. How you doing?
Oh, yeah. How are you? I'm good, thanks. How are you two guys?
Yeah, we're okay, thank you.
Well.
This is like a all NB podcast, I think.
It is, yeah. You're the first non-binary guest we've had on. I'm just having a mental flick through all the previous guests just in case I've done something dreadful. No, you are. Yeah. So and thanks so much for being here. Finally, can lay to rest precisely what Fat Mike's opinion on the queer community. No, that's for for another day. But yes, so we're here with Wil Hodgson, comedian, barber, pornographer, and non-binary icon.
Oh, I wouldn't go as far as icon, but that's nice to hear.
Well, you know, I've given you a brief introduction, but if you'd introduce yourself to our listeners of what it is you do and where you fit in all of this stuff.
So my name's Wil. I'm from Chippenham, which is in the southwest of England. And I've been into punk rock since I was about 13 years old, and I'm 45 this year, so it's been a fair old personal association with liking punk music and culture. And I'm a stand-up comedian, a barber, and I also, as you say, pornographer. I do Baldy Comics, which is a pornographic comic, which is like a queercore DIY cut and paste porn comic, and it's very inspired by punk zines and zine culture, as well as punk and skinhead culture. So I suppose I fit into this as a general punk enthusiast, I suppose, and punk performer. I suppose I was never a musician, even at like a punk level. So I suppose I sort of did comedy instead of being in a band, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, as far as I remember, and I first saw you when my sister pointed out a flyer at the Fringe. We were up one year. This is before I did comedy. We were up just on a holiday to the Fringe. We have relatives in Edinburgh, so we had somewhere to stay for free. And she pointed out this brilliant flyer with this figure with this pink mohawk and a leopard print coat with "Straight Outta Chippenham" written on it, on the flyer, not the coat. And she said, "Do you want to go and see this?" I said, I do. So we went to see you that year, and yeah, I was like, wow, this is what, people have claimed to be sort of rock and roll comedians or punk rock comedians, and that generally means they keep their leather jackets on while on stage. But this was sort of really something else. I was, and sort of, super impressed by that.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice to hear. It really is. I've still got the jacket. I just can't fit into it anymore.
I've got a few legacy clothes as well. Yeah. You are sort of musicless punk in that you do, from what I understand, you sort of take all of the things that pique your interest and fling them together with limited explanation and zero apology, which is about as punk as you can get.
Oh, thank you. That's also really nice to hear. I suppose I was like, I didn't watch a lot of stand-up before I started doing stand-up. I'd seen like some of you like kind of big league people like your Richard Pryors and that kind of thing. I'm not really, the only time I've ever been to a comedy club was in Vegas. I was on a family holiday, and me and my dad went to a club that was in like a small comedy club, like a kind of sort of top room of a bar. And it was that fella, this guy Jimmy J.J. Walker, who was American stand-up. I think he was big in the 70s. He was in something called Good Times, I think. He used to go Dynamite or something like that. But he was emceeing it, and there was I can only remember there was a guy or a sumo wrestler puppet who was doing a vent act, Well, I can't remember that. They were all doing jokes about that kid who went to. Remember the kid who went to, this was about 1993, 4. So that kid, the American kid who went to Singapore or Thailand or somewhere and he graffitied a car and he got like publicly flogged or something like that. And it was like a sort of minor thing in the news. It was like Bill Clinton was trying to save him from getting flogged, and people were going, like, "Oh, we could do with a bit of that over here. Let me tell you what." Right. And that was very much the sort of tone of Jimmy Walker was all like, "He'll never look at another can of spray paint," and all of that. Well, that's any comedy I've been to. So I was more kind of inspired, I suppose, by like your spoken word punk performers like Jello Biafra and Attila the Stockbroker, who I was fortunate enough to work with like years and years later, and those kind of like ranting poets and sort of spoken word punk performers, Lydia Lunch and those sort of people. So that was what I was inspired by, and that was I had to have a bit of a sort of semi rethink of that, I suppose, when I first started, because I thought it was all going to be more. I was under the impression it was all going to be fucking lefties and like Marxist anarchists and stuff in the stand-up circuit, and like hyper politically correct and all of that. But it fucking wasn't. It always makes me laugh when people go like, "Oh, the lefty circuit," and that. It was just fucking apolitical. It's very much sort of like the arse end of like the sort of like loaded sort of loaded culture kind of thing, I suppose, in a lot of ways. It's very much kind of like post political correctness and that. But I think a lot of people who don't go to gigs sort of think, even back then, they were like, "Oh, it's all going to be like Jenny LaCote and Simon Fanshawe and all of that." They're kind of like living in like the sort of mid-80s, or Ben Elton, I suppose. Joe Brand as well. Like old white blokes fucking hate Joe Brand, don't they? Even now, when she's not really on the telly that much. But Christ, they didn't like that fucking Through the Cake hole thing, did they? I thought it was quite good myself. Yeah. My granddad was a tremendous fan of it, which is seeing as he was like a retired detective chief inspector and a member of the Rotary Club. You'd think he wouldn't, but he thinks she was brilliant. It's funny what people like. But that was my kind of. I thought comedy was going to be a lot more kind of connected to punk and alternative culture, and I got into it, and I soon realised that with like some exceptions, it sort of just wasn't. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just wasn't what I was expecting it to be like.
Mm-hmm. No, it's always a surprise. People, when I started doing stand up, people said, "What was the biggest surprise?" And being someone who grew up not enjoying football, I was prepared, because in every social situation, conversation generally turns around to football at some point or other, and I thought there'd be a fair bit of green room chat about football, and it wasn't the lack of football, it was the sheer amount of wrestling that comedians it was I hadn't heard anyone talk about wrestling for years, for so long, and all of a sudden everyone was talking about it, and so that was, that was neither here nor there. It was just a surprising one of those surprising things. What was your biggest surprise, Red?
That's an interesting one. I don't know. I think like just generally how different different parts of the country are to each other. Like when you gig on the road, you see so many different like cities, towns, little villages, and you gig in all of them. And I find it quite strange how different people's reactions are in different areas, but then also how similar certain areas are to others. I mean, like, you can find like quite conservative areas both in like a country golf club, but then also in, central London. And it's interesting that like those two, I don't know, like different environments can have similar reactions, and then similar environments can have completely different reactions.
Yeah. You think you know where the people who dismiss London as the metropolitan liberal elite and stuff, and it's like, not all of it.
Absolutely. But also like it's just, things can always surprise you. So I feel like you can go into a gig thinking they're going to only like certain things, and people can always surprise you.
That's true. And I find that it's more often that you'll find somewhere like a sort of what is broadly a private members club somewhere out in the sticks that lets the rest of the village in if there's a function on, they're oddly enough more likely to be sort of down with a lot wider scope of comedy than some like weekend clubs in, actual cities that you'd expect to be a bit more. Anyway, but yeah, no, it's a funny old one, that. But we predominantly talk about punk rock here. So you say you got into punk rock when you're about 13. What was that? What did that punk look like? What were the groups and the stuff like that?
So I first got into it. So first of all, it was metal and hard rock for me. So I went down my entry thing was I was aware of punk from like a young age. When I grew up in the 80s, it was the punk look was everywhere. You'd see punks on the TV, usually in things like Minder and the Sweeney as like extras. Every arcade game, as you go beat 'em up arcade game, as you're going around beating up punks on the subway and stuff. There were just representations of it everywhere. And all you really knew about punks at that point was they were kind of like, just as a kid, you just thought they were hooligans with like elaborate hairstyles, usually mohawks and that kind of thing, that they were kind of like street gang types. Because from watching and all the bad guys in a lot of 80s cartoons, particularly the female bad guys, had this sort of punk aesthetic, like in the Telebugs, which was this cartoon with these like 3 robot things that had like TVs for faces. And I think Kate Copstick did one of the voices for it, but there was but I think she voiced the bad guy in it, who was called Arcadia and had like a massive rainbow mohawk. So the look was everywhere. The actual music was kind of sort of shrouded a bit in mystery when I was a kid. We were two sort of because I was born in 78, so I was born at the kind of the end of like the height of the first wave of punk. So anyway, my entry thing was basically Guns N' Roses and Kerrang magazine. So I started buying Kerrang magazine because I was into Guns N' Roses. I liked Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Iron Maiden. I also liked Queen. Before that, the first music I was into was stuff like Madonna, Prince, Michael Jackson. You just didn't think that he was incredibly popular back then. I don't really play it now because it sort of don't feel right. But he was a huge thing when I was about like 8 or 9 years old. Especially when the Bad album was out, it was like, as a kid from my year at school, I'd been to see him live at Wembley, and it was like he'd had an audience with like Jesus Christ or something like that. It's what makes it frightening though, because you think about the sort of like the big pedestal we had him on, and it sort of is scary. Do you know what I mean? With what's been said about him now, but my first thing was pop. First band I liked was Culture Club. That was my first favourite band that I had a T-shirt of. But then I got into Guns N' Roses because I was in the Sea Cadets and everyone was into Guns N' Roses, and I was like sort of mucking in and fitting in and that. So I got into, the first thing I had was Use Your Illusion 2. And it was like midway, it was like, it wasn't even rewound. It's like my mate lent it me, and I just put it on midway through. It was straight in that middle bit of Get in the Ring, where he's going like, suck my motherfucking dick, McWall, and Kerrang and that. And I was like, fucking hell, this is quite a thing like this. So that piqued my interest. And then I started buying Kerrang magazines. So in Kerrang magazine, there used to be a guy called Morat or Morat, I suppose, because it was like umlaut. It was like Morat, but it was like umlauted, like Motorhead.
I remember.
And he used to write about a lot about Motorhead, I think. He used to write a lot about punk. He was like the resident punk guy in Kerrang. So he used to write about a lot of sort of hardcore punk bands that I suppose he thought would cross over. So the first bands that I was aware of, everyone sort of knew about the Sex Pistols. They were kind of known, they were sort of bigger than punk, do you know what I mean? Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious, you kind of knew the vague gist of them. And I think the first punk record I had, though, was, I think, the Ramones' Too Tough to Die, which my mum bought me. She went to, my mum knew nothing. My mum didn't even like punk. She sort of gets it now, but she was quite sort of like everyone else's mum, didn't like it. at the time. But I can't remember what order there was. I think it was Skid Row had done a cover version of Psychotherapy on a free CD that I got with, they used to be a thing called Metal CD. We'd get a free CD with it, with like sort of 15-track CD on it. And this was one of the tracks on a Skid Row, I think, were doing like a covers album. They covered Psychotherapy by the Ramones. I really liked that track, so I was a bit curious about who the Ramones were, because I think I'd heard the name, but I thought they sort of sounded more like a kind of pop band than like a pop. I was like, that's insane, because you presume that punk bands are going to be called stuff like the Festering fucking Scabs and stuff like that, because of how punk's represented in like comics and cartoons and TV sketches and stuff. So I got, my mum was in Swindon. She said, "Did you want me to get you a record from Plum Records?" That was a very good second-hand vinyl shop. And I said, if they've got any Ramones stuff in the unlikely event. I was about 13 at the time, and she did get me this Ramones album, which was midway. It was from about 1984, so it was mid-period Ramones. None of the big hits on it, but I listened to it and I was like, well, this isn't like, apart from there's 2 tracks on it that are like very sort of thrashy punk songs. The rest of it's kind of like, I thought this is a lot more melodic than what I presume punk was going to be. I presume it was going to be sort of like one more intense than metal, I guess. That it was, so there was that, and then the next thing I got was the Sex Pistols. It wasn't Nevermind the Bollocks. It was a compilation called Kiss This, which is basically everything off Nevermind the Bollocks plus the singles. So it's basically Nevermind the Bollocks in what I now know to be a wrong order, with Silly Thing and some of the B-sides on it. And mind totally fucking blown by that. And even so the first thing I heard was Anarchy in the UK, because that was the first track on there, because it was the first single. So it goes Anarchy in the UK, God Save the Queen, Pretty Vacant, Holidays in the Sun, and then all the remaining tracks. I was absolutely fucking blown away by this. And it's the way that I still am, do you know what I mean, with that album. I still love that record. I don't care like what what shit that he comes out with at his old age, trying to shock people or whatever. It can't, like, I do. He's probably possibly an arsehole. He's possibly a very frightened man who's would sooner eat his own shit than say to someone, my wife's got Alzheimer's and I'm fucking terrified and I don't know how to deal with being sad other than trying to make everyone else around me as fucking sad as possible so that we all feel shit together. I don't know, but I still love that record. It's just a perfect pop album more than anything else. It just completes everything about it. The production, the vocals is perfect. So that was Me Away. The next thing was so there was a thing in Kerrang that was about it was Morat doing, I think it was like a thing about record collection, and Morat, I think it must be Morat with the umlauts over it. I don't know how I checked that. But he was like, he put some like, here's some good punk albums. So it was the Dead Kennedys, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables was one of them. The Misfits, who I'd heard of, Guns N' Roses, Metallica were covering them. You couldn't get that over it. You could not get Misfits or Black Flag records in Britain at the time. You'd have to go to America and get them. It was annoying. But W.H. Smith's kindly let me order Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables on cassette from them, and it came in. So I used to order stuff from Smith's. He used to have like a big book that was like, had all the stuff written in it. You'd have to go through the book, and he'd be like, there you go, under D, Dead Kennedys, and they'd order it. It'd come about like a month later, and I'm still waiting for Bad Brains Rock for Light from W.H. Smith, so I don't think ever come. That was another one that Morat used to bang on about as well, was Rock for Light. I don't know why, because the other one's better with the lightning struck. Anyway, the Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables thing, that was the turning point. That was the life changer for me, because something I'd really been into before I was into music was comedy, in terms of I loved Mad Magazine, I loved Spitting Image, I loved any kind of like obnoxious satire stuff. I loved all of that. Any kind of like comics that were taking the piss out of things and sending things up. Absolute Garbage Pail Kids, Wacky Packages. This is all stuff I was obsessed with. And the Dead Kennedys was kind of like the Pistols, but as I thought of it with it's like Mad Magazine type lyrics, because it's like California Uber Alice and all of that. I'm like, this is kind of, and I was like, this is my music. I still like other kinds of music, but I was like, this is the music. And then that was it. I'd kind of like lost interest in metal for a bit, and then I was like just trying to get any punk that I could, which was easy because punk had no fucking credibility in like 1992 at all. It was just before there was any kind of resurgence in it. And you'd go to record shops, second-hand ones, you say, have you got any punk stuff? They'd be like, what the fuck would you want that for? They'd be like, here you go, here's the first press, the first Clash album for 50p. You're fucking, like, you're several years too late, by the way, you sad bastard. And that's a lot of stuff for quite cheap. And I got into the sort of hardcore stuff, like I remember buying the first Discharge EP for like £1 in Plum Records, which you wouldn't get that for a fucking quid now. And the Exploited, who were probably, so I remember when I first heard the Exploited, I was like, no, this is what I was led to believe punk was going to be like from arcade beat-em-ups and like Ross Abbott TV sketches and stuff. This is like a pissed guy with a big mohawk talking about picking his nose and like kicking old grannies up and down the street and all of that. And there was that. And then I got the other one was when I was in the Sea Cadets, there was a kid called Scott Baxter who was a little raver. Everyone in Chippenham, you got to understand, was fucking ravers back in those days. There weren't even really many metalheads. Chippenham had this big nightclub called Gold Diggers that was like the kind of the place in town. It had some very well-respected dance music nights in there. It was like big during disco, and there were some punks scattered about. They were all older than me, but everyone was fucking ravers at my school. But Scott Baxter had heard me, and my mate Steve was also in the cadets, so I'd got into punk, and he was like, "Oh, my dad's in the place. Have you ever heard of the Foreskins?" And I was like, "I'm not into the Foreskins." Goes, "The Foreskins." Goes, "Oi, the album." I was like, "The fuck's Oi, the album?" So he was like, "The Foreskins, ACAB, all coppers are bastards, chaos, don't give a toss." So his dad did us a tape of the first Oi comp, which was put together by Gary Bushell in Another Life. Gary Bushell, the little SWP member, music journalist, rather than Gary Bushell, the sort of talk radio guy that he is now. And it had the Cockney Rejects, the Angelic Upstarts on there, and this was like a whole other kind of thing altogether. And I thought, this is like even more so than the Exploited. This is like complete, like fucking, like I thought this is like this is for fucking idiots. And I soon realised it's actually not, and it kind of grew on me in a way, especially that first Foreskins album, which was just like the most sort of like raw, basic thing I'd ever heard in my life. And I was like, this is just a load of fucking Cockney fucking thugs having like a fucking chat. It's the B-side of it's live, and it's like an invited audience. There still seems to be crowd trouble, even though they just invited their mates to stand in the studio. It's all like, fuck this. You can hear sort of like, you fucking Nazi cunts, fuck off, mug. You know, listen to that fucking lyrics and stuff. It's like, you've invited these fucking people in there. But that kind of grew on me, and then I kind of got into the idea. Then that was the whole, I sort of researched that, and it was like, these are skinhead bands. So I was like, well, skinheads. I'm like, well, they're all fucking even more staples of like TV and arcade beat 'em ups. It's like if like, punks are like obnoxious skinheads. Like, well, they're all fucking Nazis, aren't they? And then I got into started to learn about ska music and two-tone, because I was like I can't remember who told me about that. I was like about reggae. I was like, skinheads listening to reggae, and I was like, you got to be fucking shitting me. They're all fucking neo-Nazis. Like, why would they listen to reggae? This is like black people listen to reggae, Nazis listen to like whatever. But then that was down the road of that as well, was kind of getting into reggae, because I'd again vague sort of knowledge of reggae. Like my parents used to like the sort of Desmond Decker and that kind of thing, your sort of like Trojan pop kind of stuff. My parents were both from that sort of kind of scooter riding-y sort of background in the 60s when it was they were of that sort of mob generation and all of that. So I was kind of like aware of reggae, but I didn't then the whole punk reggae thing. So it all kind of snowballed. I was big into grunge as well, later on, Nirvana especially. And then I kind of like spent a few years just like in between grunge and Britpop. I was kind of like this miniature sort of GBH punk that was the only person under like 30 that gave a shit about it in Chippenham. So I started hanging around with I was a bit like that kid in This Is England, I suppose. I was hanging around with these like 35-year-old punks, like skinheads and all of that. There was Kev, the guy Kev Woodward, Kev the punk, who was used to record as Fred Frantic, and there was the Erica the tap dancing budgies, who were like a Chippenham comedy punk band. Dave Makepeace had the band Cutthroat Razors, and there was skinheads in Chippenham. There was Jacko, R.I.P. Mark Sandel, who had a glass eye, he's still about. Colin Makepeace, who had barbed wire tattooed around his neck. Back when that was like, when you seen someone like that, you thought, fuck, do you know what I mean? If you seen people like Jacko had tattoos on his fucking face and his hands, and you were like, Jesus fucking Christ, do you know what I mean? But then they all got amalgamated in. I used to do like stand-up routines about a skinhead guy that I knew there. It was kind of like he was kind of an amalgamation of like 3 or 4 blokes I used to play cards with on Tuesdays when I was a kind of young wannabe skinhead. The thing is with skinhead, it's such even though it's not about Nats. It's not about Nats. It's not necessarily about like it's kind of a lot more of a complicated thing than people think but it's like it's very kind of gender codified, and it is not. It was where I felt the most kind of like least able to do it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's very much a boys and girls thing, and that was one of like many kind of things in me, like points of my life of like feeling like this is like I'm not like I'm accepted here, but I'm not kind of like hanging out with these skinhead guys a bit, but I'm not kind of not accepted as well. And I think we sort of both, there's this sense of both of us of like you don't belong, even though we like you, like you're not kind of one of us. And I'm sort of like, no, I'm not. But like, do you know what I'm saying? But like, I wasn't made to feel that, but it's like there's this kind of like unspoken sort of like you're cosplaying a little bit, not in terms of like the music. I love the music and the culture and the punk culture, but just I don't know. I suppose punk was. I went back to being a punk after Britpop. I was a mod Britpop type. I was hook, line, and sinker with all of that. But then it was exciting because I was 17 and I was starting drinking and experimenting with drugs and like shagging and all of that. And that was the soundtrack of all that. It was like Blur and Oasis and Supergrass and stuff. And then I got more into Placebo, Kinnicky, the sort of eyelinery bands. And then I was back to being, by the time it was like the 2000s, I was just back to got back into punk again. I just kind of like thought Britpop had completely lost me. I was into dance music for a bit, like as in sort of left field, big beat. That was all big when I was at uni. I had a bit of a sort of time of actually fitting into things. And so I used to like dress like Ewan McGregor in Train Spot, and I was a lot sort of thinner in those days as well. I used to walk around with like a hair like this now, and like gazelles and like a cat sleeve Adidas t-shirt, and I sort of like read the NME and the Melody Maker, and I knew what all the cool shit was and all of that. I've had to be moments of fitting in, but then it just kind of like I just kind of got disillusioned with everything. I just started listening to old punk again. I think Rancid was the catalyst for that because they very much brought that they sort of brought a bit more credibility back to that kind of that more sort of grotty, scary punk, which I've gotten into from listening to that Oi album. So like your bands like the Foreskins, The Last Resort, and then like your bands like The Exploited and like your Crust Punk. Crust Punk's big in Wiltshire because the Subhumans are from round here. They're like
of course they are, yeah.
They're like our sort of band from round here. They were before my time, but I used to fly for Citizen Fish sometimes.
Nice.
Even though I didn't go to any of the gigs, but I used to bump into Jasper, I think his name was, in Replay Records in Bath and like Nashers and them sort of places. And he'd be like, he'd give me some flyers and I'd stick them up like around the college and all of that. So that was pretty cool.
Nice. I know it's interesting. Interesting what you say about you sort of not feeling it with the group of skinheads, because it is super gendered in sort of presentation, and that's not something that I think any of us in this episode sort of feel totally comfortable with. But I think it's you're right, the skinhead, because there's literally 2 haircuts. There is the man one and then the Chelsea one. Yeah. And I've always thought the Chelsea is way more aesthetically interesting and pleasing than just a straight skinhead for me. But I sort of had a similar thing, and it's only just occurred to me, is that when I was getting into punk, I'm a few years younger than you, and when I was getting into punk, that was when sort of the alternative music that was the most popular was nu metal coming in, your Korn, your Limp Bizkits, and all of them lot. Mm-hmm. And punk, the sort of, especially the Californian stuff, was sort of simmering along underneath it, but it was never the same thing. And so all of my friends had enormous baggy skate punk / nu metal jeans, and I hated them. So I was wearing I got my mum to actually drain pipe some drain pipes for me. They literally take them in further. So I was walking around with full on Ramon skin tight jeans, and I realized that is the closest thing I could do to wearing essentially girl clothes at the time, which is sort of what I actually wanted to be doing. But it was it's just interesting, that thing. I remember this may well be one of your things in your stand-up, Will, which you have stated as saying this is stand-up, not an autobiography. But I seem to recall you saying that part of your interest in skinheads, or your first exposure to it, was actually through Weetabix.
Yeah, definitely. That used to be the Weetabix gang were they kind of shifted. So originally the Weetabix gang were skinheads. So the tagline was you used to go, Weetabix, if you know what's good for you. And they were, it was Dunk, it was Crunch, had like a woolly hat and a football scarf. And Brian was like the sort of, he was either much younger or much stupider. You couldn't really tell what they were going for with that. Bixie was the girl, but she didn't have a fringe. She had like bows in her wheat. And then there was Brains had like big glasses, like Bruce Reynolds of the Great Train Robbery, like big glasses and like no visible eyes. But then after that, they became Soul Boys for a bit. And Dunk had like a Michael Jackson outfit, and the other lot had Hawaiian shirts and bowling shoes and stuff. And Bixie was a cheerleader. That was very much in the vein of that. People forget about that culture. It was big in Chippenham, that kind of Soul Boy thing, those Street Sounds compilation albums. It used to be like albums that were like compilations of like the latest like 12-inch American like electro and soul stuff. They'd have like a picture of a drawing of an American footballer or a big hot dog, or the statue living sort of like it's fucking American stuff, but kind of like like it's American, like it's black American, but don't make a fucking big deal of that bit of it, because we're trying to sell this to like white guys in places like Swindon and that kind of thing. But you'd always see like guys in Swindon, like girls with those perms, and blokes in like American football wearing that. Because that's kind of coming back now. You see a lot of like young, like sort of kids wearing like American sports merch, and that was kind of like feels like a bit of a throwback to when everyone had like, you had to have like a Chicago Bears were big because of the Fridge Perry being a popular thing, and the Miami Dolphins was always, if there was like a girl that was into American football, it'd be the like in keeping with like sort of stereotypes, I suppose, the Dolphins, because the Dolphins and that. But it was like a but yeah, the Weetabix did that. Then they were break dancers, and then they just fucked the whole thing off, and then they were just like generic, like this one's Indiana Jones themed. But yeah, the Weetabix skinheads, all that stuff goes for like big bucks on eBay. Now I've got some of it. I wouldn't sell it anyway, because I'd worry about some fucking American bonehead who would buy it, because you get like some brilliant skinheads in America, but there's also, as I understand, a lot like right wing wankers who hang about with fucking Proud Boy hipster. They should fucking be like denounced just for fucking hanging out with in the first place, regardless of politics. Do you know what I mean? But that's the thing with skinheads. You get like in there are people, this is the thing, there's a myth that all skinheads are racist, but it's as big a myth saying that none of them are as well, because a lot of them are. Even some of the ones that aren't racist are conservative in other ways as well. But so are punks as well. I know like sort of old punks who are like walking fucking Daily Mail editorials, and I think it's just an age thing more than anything else. I think if you're not careful, you become a moaning old twat in your old age, regardless of how cool you were to start off with. But that was the first exposure to skinheads, the Weetabix, and Tom Thug out of Oink comic. And later Buster, Tom Thug was like a comedian. He ended up in Buster. It was Oink was the greatest comic of the 80s. It was kind of like the in between the Beano and Viz. There was Oink. And it was just the greatest comic ever. And he was in that. And then he got amalgamated into Buster or Wizard Chips or something. But he was like Tom Thug. And the whole thing was that he was a complete fucking idiot. He was most likely a fucking like Screwdriver Combat 84 type of skinhead rather than like Angelic Upstart's Blaggers ITA sort of skinhead. But yeah, the thing is, the sort of I think skinheads are stereotyped a lot. I think even the because I just think even the right wing arseholes, scumbags though they are, I think it's dangerous to misunderestimate them and just go, these people are all like brainless arseholes. Some of them are, do you know what I mean? But some of them are not, and they're not like scruffy and they're not thick, and that's why they're fucking dangerous. Do you know what I mean? So even some of those lot do the kind of thing is as well with it. Is I could never. This is the whole thing I had with being a mod as well, because I did have a mod face, like a lot of people. That's quite a popular one round here because Chippenham was mod. Chippenham was like the lone mod town back in the 60s in North Wiltshire. So like Trowbridge, Calne, Melksham, like all around us was rockers and Grebos, and Chippenham sort of stood alone as mods. I think that has shaped the mentality of Chippenham ever since, and the attitudes to counter that has always been this thing. I think that's why in Chippenham there's not some that independent businesses struggle more than they do in those other towns. Because I think in Chippenham, because of the mod thing. So here's the thing, right? That I kind of like, I've got a theory about mod and Thatcherism and that, and it's not a popular theory, but it's the things about some of the worst bits of mod is that it's very kind of like, it's like, this is cool, and here's how much money you need to spend on it. On getting
it's a very consumerist subculture.
Yeah, here's the stuff that you need to be better than the bloke next to you. Like, you need a better scooter than him, otherwise you're not as good as him. And then it got to the point where, and I said this once, I think, and I got was like, I said, when you watch Quadrophenia now, like post 2016, you watch Michael Elphick knocking Phil Daniels down. He punches him down the fucking stairs when he comes and he's like, "Oh, I fought in a war for you." And you think, like, do you know what he did? His dad did go to war and fight Nazis and build the NHS and stuff. And his son's like, "Fuck you, I've got a Vespa." Like, fuck your bullshit. I've got some stuff. I'm going to grow up and vote for Margaret Thatcher and have it because I want a fucking better. When I've not a mod, I want a better fucking house than the bloke next to me as well. There's something about, it's also tucking your shirt in. Fuck that. Mods and that's one of the best things with punk is that you don't have to tuck your shirt in. Not saying you should. There's nothing wrong with tucking your shirt in, but like the girth of me, do you know what I mean? Wearing a tie for fuck's sake as well. That's why the mod revival was decimated by two-time ties. It was all kids that had just left school, and they must have been like the great music and that. They must have been fuck putting a tie on again. Then it's like, here's another thing where you don't have to have a scooter. You just need, like, you can keep the shirt you've bought for being a mod, fuck the tie off and the jacket, and just get a hat, and the shoes are fine. It must have been like, right, I'm going to fucking do this now. Plus, like, the specials are better. I do like Secret Affair, but the specials and madness shit all over Secret Affair and Merton Parker's.
Yeah,
I do like the Jam though. Everyone in Chippenham, the Jam's like again, like, I know like the Jam are great, but I know a lot of dickheads who like the Jam are kind of like they're a bit sort of like, Paul Weller's not a gammon, but he's got some gammony fans. It's not his fault though.
Yeah. No, well, the thing is that you can understand the lyrics in Jam songs, and when you've got a song that starts off "sup up your beer and collect your fags," that's a very, very easy thing to latch onto in so, you know, that's quite a sort of a clarion call to a certain type of go out and have a good time kind of things, I guess.
Well, totally. I love a lot of that sort of thing. Yeah. That sort of thing as well. I think with the Jam, it was because in early doors, I think Weller was kind of, when he was very young, I think he was kind of flirting with the whole thing of like, what about a punk band that are like, actually, the Queen does a good job. I think you'll find. There's like bits of that, and there's a bit of like early doors. There's a bit of like, what of our empire and all of that. I think quite soon he was like, hang on, I shouldn't be fucking even like flirting with this because there's actual fucking Nazis now.
Yeah.
Burning up.
I think some of that was probably due to the affection that he had for the Kinks as well, because they do sort of British pride from a very sort of Garden Fate kind of perspective. It's sort of not really a empire or anything like that, but you know, it's that kind of thing. So I think there was aspects of that to it as well. But I think Billy Bragg said of that era of music, he said, well, the thing is that we loved the Who and the Rolling Stones, but we couldn't get to them. We couldn't be in a place where they were within arm's reach. But everything we loved about the Who, the Jam also did, but they were our age and we could talk to them at the bar afterwards. Everything we loved about the Rolling Stones, the Clash did, but we could talk to them at the bar afterwards and they were our age and that kind of thing. Hello everyone, Eddie here. Red and I hope you're enjoying our show. If you have been and would like to help us make it a little more easily, then you can donate to us at our Ko-fi page, which is ko-fi.com/punkrockelite, or you can look in the show notes for our link tree. If you can't help us financially, we totally understand, but would love it if you spread the word to other people who would like this podcast. We thank you for your continued support. We massively appreciate it. Back to the show.
Approachability is a big thing about punk. I used to go to gigs in Bristol and there'd be people from like Chaos UK, Screamer and those sort of bands hanging around. You could like Chaos UK, I bought their current album that they've been going since about 77, 78, I think, but they had a Mo-Rap again, going back to him in Kerrang, was pushing the fuck out of their 100% Two Fingers in the Air album. And I bought that. And I went to the Terrorvision gig with my mum. I did quite like Terrorvision, but I was going because Die Toten Hosen were supporting. They apparently in Germany, it was the other way round. In Europe, Terrorvision was supporting Die Toten Hosen. And then in Britain, it was reversed because they were the bigger band. But and Chaos UK was at the bar, and I was like, he chatted to me, and like I sort of bought him a drink, and I was about 16 at the time, and it was good. It was great just to be able to talk to someone like that I'd bought a record by, that I was glued into my bloody Walkman. That was a big kind of thing. It wasn't me first. I think maybe that was my first, but the first punk gig I went to was my first gig is Iggy Pop. My dad took me and my mate Steve on just before my 14th birthday, I think it was, to all the way up to Kentish Town Forum in London. And we got there, and the doormen were like, fuck off. My dad was like, we come all the way from fucking Chippenham. They was like right up on the balcony at the fucking back, and like don't even go for a piss, just fucking sit there. And it was fucking tremendous. It's quite a good and bad one to start off with, because this is Iggy in sort of 92, 93, and it's just fucking quite a thing to see. But I think that was the first one that I went to, like with my mates on our own. And I went to the one of the last Ramones ones in Britain as well, the last but one, and then me and my mate had tickets for the last ever Ramones gig in Britain. We were going to go with my dad, and then my dad, in a sudden fit of Chippenham racism, suddenly decided he didn't want to go to Brixton because we'd all be mugged, personally mugged by Winston Silcott or whatever. He was like, "Oh, it's dodgy round there." I was like, "Fuck me!" And it was like, so I've still got 3 intact tickets for the last ever UK Ramones gig that are unlike ripped because my dad was like I'm not fucking going there. I was like, I took my mum, me and my wife took my mum to see Trailer Park Boys at Brixton Academy, and I was like, here I'm walking around with me dear old mum, and I was like, this is where my dad was like. Thing is, like 90s Chippenham, it's like there was a whole thing, and there was like Brixton. It was like it's a fucking war zone because loads of black people live there. Ergo, there'll be rioting constantly, and there'll be like people throwing bricks at you. That's what it's fucking like, Ranger. You have to really educate yourself into it. So maybe it's not so bad now, but like back then in times like this, you really had to kind of, if you just like pootle along going by the perceived wisdom of like your parents and like other people around you, you'd end up as a right fucking redneck, because it was quite a there was a lot of like racism and homophobia back then. Probably I was undoubtedly like sort of that kind of thinking till I got into punk was one of the things, and grunge, and someone else who gets a lot of stick now, but Ben Elton on the telly was someone else who made me think differently about it. But I was in the Sea Cadets. We were all kind of like little fucking little fucking Tories at the time. Do you know what I mean? We were like not so much like fucking UKIP as whatever now, but we were all political, but we were all kind of like the Queen's great, like the Argentinians and the French are all fucking wankers, like fuck the IRA, like fuck anyone that fucks with Britain and that kind of thing. And we were kind of deeply sort of like there's a lot of homophobia. There was a lot of racism of the kind of like of the sort of there was a kid who was a black kid from Bristol and his nickname was Snowy and everyone thought that was fucking acceptable. Do you know what I mean? Sure, and it was it would be the sort of thing like, oh, we can't be racist because Snowy here is our friend and stuff. It's like that's one of the best things about punk and alternative music was it just kind of made me fucking kick back about that and not just grow up with the exact same views as my dad had. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, but it's weird, kind of like now, I've kind of recently reconnected with a lot of my mates from the cadets because we had some great times then, and we're quite sort of philosophical. We do sort of go, we don't go sort of like, oh, that was the good old days. We all sort of think we do sort of look back and go like, fucking hell, we had some fucking appalling views. Back in those. I mean, a lot of my mates of the cadets are quite sort of royalist and not traditionalists and stuff. But when you see how they've moved on things like LGBT stuff and like racism and stuff, it's like a tremendous it's like they're still not going to be. You're not going to be like seeing them down the front of a fucking Bob Dylan gig anytime soon. But they're different to what they were. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
They're kind of like because they all got kids now. So people have kids that are on the various kind of LGBT spectrums and stuff like that. Do you know when you get older? But I think I kind of felt like I got a little bit of a head. Not saying I'm better than other people. I got a little bit more of a head start with punk than, I mean, fucking Guns N' Roses. We all loved Guns N' Roses. You can imagine how fucking like enlightened that made us. I mean, they had that song "One in a Million," which I think's been like sort of consigned rightly to the dustbin of history, but that was on the Lies album, and it was Axl Rose out. I think Screwdriver fucking covered it.
Well, there you go.
So that was what I got out of punk. Was just the main thing. I think was I just didn't end up. I mean, I'm an arsehole in some ways. I'm fucking like you can't say I'm not a racist because you are, even because you don't always realise you're being one. Do you know what I mean? But like, I at least try my best not to be a massive fucking arsehole. Well, I try not to be a fucking massive racist, but I'm white. Do you know what I mean? And all of that. But at least I'm not like, you know what I'm trying to say? Kind of like maybe at least I knew it was a bad thing to be one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's no, you're absolutely right. That's the thing, is that punk does sort of open up questions that you just don't ask if you grow up in a place like you've described Chippenham very, very clearly as being one of those. Small town it's used as a phrase for a reason, I guess, and punk rock can very much. Lots of music can, but punk rock's really got it, because a lot of people from small towns go, we're the only 4 people in this town that don't make us all want to be sick. So can we, and then that's a band all of a sudden. These days it's a podcast, unfortunately, to the detriment of music and podcasting. But speaking of which, this podcast about NoFX, can you remember the first time you heard NoFX?
Yeah, it would be the Punkorama, the first one.
Okay.
That would be the first time, because I'd heard of them. So that came out around about. So that was when there was the sort of not the second wave of punk, like the resurgence of punk. So like the 90s punk thing, and that was going back yet again to Morat. I remember he reviewed the Punkorama thing. He was having a bit of a moan, and he thought it was all shit by Rancid and Total Chaos. and Bad Religion. He was like, this is all fucking bollocks. Like, I've been fucking arrested for this shit and all of that. You could see how he felt that way. But I remember there was a place in Swindon, down in the bottom of the old Brunel Centre. There was a record place that had metal records and rock stuff. This guy had all the Epitaph stuff on like a sort of box on his counter, and it was sort of like, I got all this fucking newfangled American punk stuff, and he said, have you heard of NoFX? I've not heard of NoFX. I was more interested in Rancid and Total Chaos because of the aesthetic of that, because Total Chaos were like outright UK 82, and Rancid were, I think I'd already at that point bought Let's Go from Replay in Bath. Used to have all of the American punk stuff on vinyl. They used to sell Maximum Rock and Roll, and I bought Let's Go on. It was my copy of Let's Go was 2 white 10 inches rather than like a 12-incher.
Huh.
It's like it was a double record. Still got it. I still play it. It's fucking brilliant. So the first NoFX thing anywhere I heard was Punkorama, which I think I bought for the guy in Swindon, and it was Don't Call Me White and Liza and Louise.
Yeah,
for that.
Nice.
And I liked him. I liked the "Don't Call Me White" thing. I don't know what I was kind of like, the way I felt about the lyrics at the time was because I was big into hip hop at that time as well, and there was a lot of kind of like. So I was big into Ice Cube and the Lynch Mob and like Paris. For some reason I was into all the kind of like Nation of Islam affiliated kind of rappers. So I remember I used to buy Hip Hop Connection, and the newsagent said to my mum, like, are you aware of what your son's buying here? And I was like, this is not, they all fucking hate white people and stuff. And my mum didn't give a shit. But I thought, I was like, listening to Don't Call Me White, I was like, oh, yeah, you're quite right, fucking having a go at me. But of course, now I know, and I suppose probably Fat Mike knows, unless I'm like misreading the song, it's kind of, it's not quite, it's a bit like Don't Like Guilty being white by Minor Threat. It's the like, this is like this reverse sort of like, yeah, it is, but if you think about it, but then that was Ian McCoy as like a child, wasn't it, essentially? Yeah. And Slayer covered it as like 45-year-old men, and they were it was like guilty of being right, I tells you. And you can imagine Ian McCulloch, for fuck's sake, like now I really wish I'm not. But
as if that guy's not spent enough time with his head in his hands.
Well,
very good.
Good at there's that. So I like that. I thought that was interesting lyrics at the time, and Liza and Louise I liked because I just thought it was fucking hot. Do you know what I mean? Like blazing up and that. I thought it was the motivation of the song, just like it's good. It was good. It's again queer representation in music, which had previously been. So as far as that had gone, there was basically ironically the Anti-Nowhere League, I presumed, were bisexual at least because of all that stuff they did about sucking old men's cocks and stuff. I didn't realise they were like raging conservative homophobes from Tunbridge Wells. Because I bought that, like a lot of people, I bought that album off the back of Metallica covering So What, and being told that it had been like re-edited because of the I still do quite like that album, but I've always thought they make me want to climb the fucking wall every time they come on my radar now. They came back, and I saw them live supported twice. I saw them supporting the Ramones. They were fucking great. This is the old lineup though. Before, I think the problem seems to be when everyone fucked off, bar that the singer Animal, who looks a lot like George Michael for a homophobe, I always think. And this is the thing, they wear like leather head to toe. They got their logos a fist, and they do all these things, these lyrics about sort of. I thought I thought that was part of the whole thing, is that they're going sort of like this. I suck fucking men's cocks. Fucking check this.
It feels a bit Turbo Negro, who on the hand are like majoritively gay. I think they have an album called Ass Cobra, like they're head to toe in leather, like wearing like PVC sailor outfits, and like I don't know, feels the same sort of vibe.
I love it when Turbo Negro are playing a festival because you can always spot their fans because they just dress like members of the band. They look like, I'm sure some of them could just wander backstage and people would assume, oh, they must be part of that band. No one's checking their, access all areas or anything. But yeah.
Who was on? Me and Stuart McLaughlin and Paul B. Edwards were on a fucking bus full of them once in Norway. I think going from Sweden to Norway. I wasn't sat with them because I can't sit in the back of buses because I feel sick, but they were all sat at the back and there was all these fucking Turban Negro fans with like the sailor hats and stuff on. And it was they had the poster for the gig was was a Sailor Jerry pin-up of a woman in a sailor hat and a pea coat with period blood going all the way down her legs and across the floor. And I was like, that's the Scandinavian fucking poster edition. Like, I can't see they're going to be like touring fucking Tennessee with that or something.
Yeah. It's great, but you're right about the queer representation, because especially with Liza and Louise, that long before it gets to any of the actual sex, it tells the story of a woman who has been treated horrifically by men.
Yeah.
It's not just like if that song was written by the Vandals, it would just be descriptions of hardcore lesbian sex. Whereas in this way, it's actually a story that I imagine people recognise in themselves. Some people.
God, the Vandals. I sort of remember. I think I had one of theirs. They kind of they sort of started off. They're one of these where they started off like in the old days of like Orange County punk, and then they came back much later with like a vaguely one of them a Judge or something like that, or a.
I know one of them's definitely. I think the bass player or one of the founder members is quite right wing.
And the drummer's just joined Foo Fighters.
Oh yeah, former Josh Freese, who's left Offspring with a replacement drummer for Slam Dunk because he got the call from Foo Fighters and went, "Yeah, see you later, guys." But they started off basically wanting to be the Toy Dolls. The Vandals always consider themselves to be basically an oi band because they were all massive fans of Toy Dolls, which is why all their songs are, songs about having a mullet. I've got an ape drape. It's just a song about having a mullet, and it's just precisely what the Toy Dolls would have been like if they'd have grown up in, like you say, Orange County or one of the less beachy areas of California.
What I love about the Toy Dolls is they go to like Japan and America singing songs about Hilda Ogden and like Jimmy Corkill and that kind of, and about like sort of blokes they specifically know.
Yeah,
some of their songs are like. Yeah, some of their songs seem to be specifically about things that have happened that you'd have to like be in their circle of friends to know what the fuck they were on about. I've seen them live once, the Toy Dolls. They were fucking brilliant. The guy out of Snuff playing drums with them, and it was proper like Olga's a fucking. I got my Ventolin inhaler signed by him, which was like I was like, I got asthma. And then by the time it'd all come off by the time I got home because I put it in a sweaty pocket and it had all just like melted off of it. But I was like. Things that should be on display that can never be.
No, currently the lineup of the Toy Dolls is Olga, Tom from Goober Patrol on bass, Tommy Goober, and Duncan from Snuff.
I remember Goober Patrol playing in Bath. I think I might have seen him in Bath back in the 90s, maybe Goober Patrol, Hat and Feather or Porter Butt or somewhere like that.
Absolutely where you'd have seen them, because they were one of the few. They were signed to Fat, but they were a British band. So, Will, do you have a favourite NoFX song?
I reckon probably it's a tie between. This is the whole kind of like skinhead oi culture thing. The Bruise or Bob, I think.
Nice. Good choice.
Also between those two because. The Bruise is great. I think that's just a brilliant. I know it's a parody oi song, but I think it's a brilliant oi song, and it's it's possibly my favourite. But I do like Bob just because of it's a great song. I like the kind of the sort of skinhead parody of it and stuff. So I'm going to say the Bruise though, because that's a genuinely great great song. The Rancid cover of it's brilliant as well on that split. But those are good, and also, I'm going to go with the Bruise. Actually, Bob a close second, but I think they do. NoFX do oi well. I think even when it's like lampooning it.
Yeah. Well, I think it is a genre that Mike genuinely does like. Sort of, hardcore. Oi are the sort of his two favorite from what I understand and stuff. So that's the thing. If it was just a straight up sort of parody, I don't think it would have anywhere near the longevity. That it does. Those sort of, for me anyway. But yeah, no, the Bruise is just fantastic. I really, really like that one too.
And it's like such a staple of their live sets as well.
It's a really strange one as well, because the guitars sound really weird on the album version. Just got a really strange sort of, anyway. But yes, that's a cracking choice there, and Bob as well, which we Red and I were confused because we saw them at Leeds the other day, in their last Leeds gig, just before their last UK gig ever, and they didn't play Bob. We were surprised because we thought that would be an always player, but they are doing the whole of White. They did the whole of White Trash at Hatfield, so maybe they were trying to mix it up for the people who had tickets to both. But not to worry. So, do you have a favourite NoFX album?
So, Studio, White Trash, that was the first one I bought. I bought that again from Replay Records on vinyl in about 94 or something like that. And I really enjoyed that. I think that's my favourite. But really, the one that I played most and the one that is what I go to NoFX album is I Heard They Suck Live.
Amazing.
Nice.
It's got my preferred versions of several songs on it. Any of the pre White Trash songs, I prefer the live versions over the recorded versions, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially the versions of the Beer Bong.
Yeah.
The version of the Bruise as well, I think it's the best version of the Bruise. And it's just great. There's a lot of it's when I first heard it, I was kind of like stop fucking about and like play the songs, but that kind of like it wouldn't feel right now without that. But it's great. It's like I know they've done a greatest hits album, but I think to me that's like you say best of the pre-punk in Drublic stuff.
Yeah.
That's just if I feel like I think I'm gonna put NoFX on, that'll be the one that I'll bung on. The other live one I like as well that I heard they still suck live. I think it's good as well.
Yeah, I think that as good as their ability to record themselves and sound fantastic, the way they are live is they've yet to capture it on anything other than an actual full live recording. Did you ever hear the live version of Ribbed that they did?
Yeah, I did. That was interesting. I thought with the I've always been kind of sort of interested with Mike. Seems to have like a love-hate thing with ska music, which I love. It's like one of my probably my favourite. It's possibly my favourite music, ska, even in terms of music, even more so than punk, because but not so much. Do you know what I mean? Punk's always going to mean more to me because as an entity, but like musically. Ska, but Mike's obviously, but it's interesting to hear him say that he liked it when he heard Operation Ivy, and then he clearly has gone off of it at some point later down the line, which is like fine. But it was nice to have that kind of clarified because I remember them doing that songs don't do ska anymore because it sucks. I was like, well, you clearly liked it at one point because you've done some like good ska. They still do though, don't they? On the more recent albums, they've just done a thing with Fishbone, haven't they? Who are one of the like greatest ska bands.
Yeah. They well, he signed. Oh, sorry, Red. Carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's quite similar to what you were saying about their Oi songs. In like, they do these songs in different genres, and whilst it might seem like a pastiche at times and a parody at times, there is still like an undeniable respect for the genre that they're sort of playing around with.
I think also Mike is a gobshite and therefore will say stuff because he's bored or fancies having a laugh and that kind of thing. But he said, Operation Ivy was what made him go, oh, wow, that's interesting. And so I think he's probably not, he probably doesn't have a lot of Real Big Fish records, but something a bit more.
Well,
we had Robin Leach from Random Hand on the podcast, and he was talking about when Random Hand made a vocal decision amongst themselves that we were a minor key ska band. we don't write songs in a major key, and I think that might, I think Fat Mike is a minor key ska fan is the easiest way to describe it.
I think American ska's got a funny sort of pedigree, because I think a lot of American people associate with I do actually like Real Big Fish, but they're kind of more of a pop punk band with trumpets rather than a ska band to me, because it's very much on beat. It's kind of like marching band music rather than like ska music. It goes like pump 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 like that, rather than like ska music. It's not as it's more moshy than dancey. But that Operation Ivy album is a fucking belter. That's another one that I bought. Yeah. I bought it from Replay on CD, and I wish I'd bought the vinyl. The amount of vinyl I wish I'd fucking bought from Replay back then. I should have bought Operation Ivy on Energy on vinyl. I bought the CD in the end, but there was a lot of they had loads and loads of Epitaph and Fat Wreck stuff. Like, just sort of looking back now, I think I wish I'd fucking bought it all on that rather than on cassette now. Because I didn't realise that I'd be playing vinyl all day in a barber shop back then, and I just would like to have had more than. But I still play that Rancid one even now, and that's fucking tremendous album. Tim Armstrong's on his day is a fucking genius, I think.
Yeah. Have you heard the new Rancid have just released 3 new songs from their upcoming album, and it sounds vintage. It's
quite good, I think. I
was really impressed.
Yeah, I like the Tomorrow Never Comes one. I think it's good. Good. There's always something I like on their records, but those first lot, especially Out Come the Wolves, fucking hell, that's still top 5 all time punk, I think, of anyone's got to be.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, Out Come the Wolves is just lightning in a bottle, really. It's a fantastic bit of work. But yeah, so I think that's where because and then Paul Smith from the New Cross Inn venue in London said loves NoFX, his favourite band. He said, yeah, I don't go to them for ska. I don't consider them a ska band. So, just goes to show no pleasing everyone. Do you have a favourite NoFX lyric, Will?
That's an interesting one. So, I'll tell you about a favourite. I'll tell you one that stuck with that I thought was really witty when I was 16, was that Bugly Eyes thing, the Bo Derek, Bo Diddley thing. I remember me and my mate, it wasn't even really into NoFX, used to like that. They became a bit of a thing, a sort of small social circle, because we didn't know anything about, I didn't know how awesome Bo Diddley was as a musician back then. I was only vaguely aware of him, but I knew that it was presumably talking about an aging Afro-American R&B musician of some kind, and that was really fun. I'm trying to think of there are some really great ones in going back to the Brooms again. There's some really great ones in that I'd imagine. I'm not Jewish, but that I can imagine if you were, it'd make you feel properly like going around and kicking some fucking anti-Semites about.
We had on the keyboardist from NoFX, who's Jewish herself, and she cites that as being one of her favorite songs, because it, really easy to sort of get geared up by it. It's I don't know, it sounds, I wish I had that experience with the song, because it does sound like it really gives it another dimension.
Oh, sorry. There's always been Jewish skinheads as well, right from the start, because it's like an East End London phenomenon. There always has been, and in America and New York and that as well. So it's just good that, and it's not an oi band that have done it, but it's just good that there's there's kind of a song for them. And the sort of more I talk about it, the more I keep saying it's a parody thing. Maybe it's not. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it is it's thinking about the actual lyrics seems more sort of more sincere, but there's some great ones in that. But yeah, the Bo Diddley thing, and there's the other one. I do quite like, even though I sort of feel differently about the lyrics of Don't Call Me White, there's some good ones in that as well. So I can't so much think of individual lyrics, but sort of songs where I think the lyrics are good on. I mean, I think it's still like a. He's a good writer, Fat Mike, of lyrics. He's good at doing humorous lyrics without being an outright comedy band, like you say, like the Vandals and that. He kind of stopped short of that. The song about the lazy transvestite songs are good one as well, just by the kind of like, which I relate to as not as a. I don't really sort of consider myself a transvestite. I sort of used to a bit before, like sort of like several years and different vocabulary ago. But I relate to the whole thing of just wanting to wear comfortable clothes a lot of the time, and just like not wearing things you can't be asked to wear them so much. It's like I've got to relate to that quite a bit. So that's a good one as well. I like his little bits of backstory in it about talking about like the Rocky Horror Picture Show and the old films and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's a good one. And yes, I'd say out of those three, I guess. I wish I could think of like an individual line, but I suppose the Bo Diddley one is still quite. It's like meaningless, but actually quite. I don't know what it is about that. It's quite, for old time's sake.
Well, I think the because that's the first full length with El Jefe on it. I think Mike was really enjoying having someone who could sing the song in the style that he'd written it. Because he's, oh boy, oh what, that all of that kind of stuff going on, and he's like, wow, we can do all of these kind of things now. And he calmed down by the time they got to Punk and Drublic, but he's got that. He's got the sort of the Cholo accent in Johnny Appleseed. And there's another one as well. Is there? It's the jazz guy on the cover of Straight Edge. So there's like,
I love that. That version of it. I fucking love mine. I love Minor Threat. Just anyway. That's
But yeah, no, it's that's a fun one. Let's okay. Do you have a favourite memory of NoFX?
I'm gonna say as a total cop out, it's gonna be just like fucking about with my mates and singing that Bo Diddley Bugley eyes and making each other laugh with it. It's like I never saw NoFX live. If you said to me like what is my, I'm terrible at getting to see things live because I live in the sticks and don't drive.
Right.
And I was on the circuit for ages and I just didn't feel like I've never been good at. Like I went to see the Chats last Tuesday in Bristol and they were fucking amazing. But that was the first like proper gig I've been to for about 7 years, I think. But I know we went to Bad Manners actually a few weeks before that. But I'd say memory of probably just walking around. If you said to me like what was like if they all got like exploded or something now, I'd probably like go, well, it was probably going to be buying White Trash on vinyl. Remember that? I remember walking around listening to They Suck live a lot on my headphones and that. I suppose that would be the enduring memory. Would just be that was a soundtrack to a lot of like walking around and between pubs and like sort of teenage sort of punk life and stuff with that in me pocket and stuff. So I suppose it'd be just things like that, just things that is sort of soundtracked a bit. I suppose. I just like obviously I won't get to see him live now because they've properly finised up now, haven't they?
They've finished their UK dates. Yeah. There's like how many dates left? Maybe like halfway through the tour.
They said that they are finishing in something like October 2024 will be the last date. I think they're doing a Los Angeles super farewell show of part of the 40 cities, 40 songs, 40 shows thing for their 40 years. They said that they might do Dublin, which is the closest they're going to do to mainland UK, but outside of that, the Leeds and Hatfield that they just had, that's it. But who knows? I think in the mid 90s they vowed to never play Scotland again after a particularly poor reception they got at a gig. I'm suspecting Glasgow because that city's got form on treating performers roughly, but I couldn't say for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I never will see him now unless I'm sure that the members will have other musical endeavours that might come round here at some point. And
yes, that would be nice. It would be interesting to see though, because they're all edging towards 60 at the moment. So, but stranger things have happened. I mean, I'm saying this. We live in a world where the Rolling Stones exist, so
well, I never thought I'd see the Pistols, mate, but I did. It ended up in seeing the '90s reunion. Do you know what? It was great. This is the thing. It was like it should have been shit, really, but it was really fucking. It was. I saw the Phoenix Festival one, not the Finsbury Park one, but it was. Yeah, it was fucking started off with bodies like right the way down. I was right down the front. It was fucking magic, like naff that they'd done it, but magic, mate, as well. Fucking absolute belter time. But yeah, nothing remotely cool or innovative about it. Total cash. But the thing is, I make no bones about that. You can't call Steve Jones a sellout because his whole thing has been purely motivated by shagging and fucking premium continental lager right from the start. So yeah, never say never. No band's ever properly.
No, that's true. I don't know. I mean, Mike is threatening to get into stand up, so you never know.
Oh God,
yeah, I know.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I love Mike, and I think Mike's very funny, but I do not think he should do that.
I get the feeling that Melvin and Hefe do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the stage humour. And so doing it without someone there to bounce off of, I don't know, but obviously I will definitely try and watch every second of it that I can get access to, because I am absolutely fascinated / horrified with the idea. But
You'll hear about it before you see it. You'll be like, there'll be something or another that'll be. You'll see it on fucking on Twitter. Go, what the fuck's he just said? That
absolutely. Yeah,
purple turtle for on a Monday or.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when he comes to do Verve in Leeds first, every Tuesday, I'll. Yeah, but yeah, cool. What would you recommend the best way for a non-fan to get into NoFX, if there is such a way?
Yeah, I'd say if you don't like them, you're not gonna like them. But I'd say probably the. See, realistically, and I'm trying to think of like a cooler answer than go on Spotify and like the top 5 that come up under it. Have a listen to those. If you don't like any of those, you're probably not going to like them. I'd say probably that what I got from like thinking this was all right, thinking this is good, was the yet again. I think I heard they suck live. I think probably that might be as good a place as any. To start with it, because that was when I thought like a couple of good compilation tracks. Thought White Trash, thought that's a good album. But that was like, this is a great album. So I think probably that's as good an introduction as anything to it. And yeah, I'd say that really, even more so than the greatest songs ever written by us one, because I just think some of those versions are better, and just the energy of it.
Yeah,
and that I think it kind of encapsulates what they do. And I'll say after that, listen to They Still Suck live, and then I want to have a dig into the albums, I suppose, after the studio ones. But yeah, I think start with a live album.
It's a great answer, because you've got the blend of their music and their personalities, because they are sort of. I mean, something we came to sort of round to the realization to is, they're not Mike Burkett, Aaron Alberta. They are Fat Mike, El Jefe, Melvin, and Smelly. They are essentially characters. I don't think they're putting anything on as such, but they've turned themselves into these sort of on-stage versions of themselves that are very, very similar. But as you know, being a performer, there are little bits you change about yourself. You tweak the EQ a little bit just to make everything work a bit more smoothly. And I think knowing where these songs are coming from and what sort of personalities have contributed to them is a great suggestion.
Also, you might get into Rudimentary Peni through that as well, because there's a Rudimentary Peni cover or like a half of one later on. It was another fucking brilliant as well. Rudimentary Peni, best one of the best of those. It took me a while. I found anarcho-punk quite hard work to start off with, but that and Zines are like are great ones, and that's the thing is that's been the big thing in Chippenham is the punks that you get a lot of the punks who are more like have sort of long hair and do a lot of shrooms and stuff. They're kind of the thing is Chippenham, even the skinheads listen to fucking Pink Floyd and smoke drugs round here. It's the countryside. Do you know what I mean? It's a fucking strange place round here.
It's yes, I think it took me many attempts to actually get through a whole Amoebix record. And it's still not one I go rushing back to, but I'm glad I persevered with it because I knew someone at university who was obsessed with every different type of subgenre, sort of insisting. I couldn't just refer to Social Distortion as punk. No, they're cowpunk. Is that even a thing, really? No, they are. Don't. I was like, oh, for God's sake.
Is that Arise, the Amoebix album?
Yes, very. I mean. Yeah, it's got some super slow numbers on it as well, like quite sludgy and.
My mate Olag, who drinks in my local, who's an old Chippenham punk, who I can't remember what he's called. Olag. I think it's after that meerkat off the advert, possibly. But he's like a proper old school Chippenham punk. But he works on the motorways, and that's what he puts on in the van every morning. Apparently, it's that the Axeman is coming, chunk, 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 chunk. When he's out to go to put cones down and stuff, it's like the apocalypse of the cones. I always think of Olag with Amoebix. That's one of his favourite records. The Olag's a fucking. He's a good fella, old Chippenham punk. Just the other week, he slung a couple of fucking racists out the fucking pub that were acting the fucking twat. He's fucking proper. I remember him saying to me once, I was thinking about renting out the barn and not booking a white power gig, and then just fucking like kicking the shit out of anyone who comes. There'll be no white power gig because we can fucking like. It was like capital idea.
Just a honey trap of violence.
Boy, oh boy, a Screwdriver reunion with like guest vocalists from Brutal Attack and such, like loads of guys from Class War in there waiting for you.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Did you know that Dave Mallow, the drummer from Operation Ivy, is in a cover band called Jew Driver?
I've heard of Jew Driver. Yeah,
they cover Screwdriver songs, but make them pro-Jewish.
There's one called Pink Panzer's another one where it's Screwdriver songs. The guy does like a spot on Ian Stewart, but all the songs are about how much he likes taking it up the arse and stuff. It's fucking brilliant.
Well, and if he just knew how to drive, he'd still be here to defend himself. But he's not. Shame. Oh well. Cool.
That car's a hero.
Apparently, we were talking to the guys from the Midlife Punk podcast, and Tom Sidwell said that he lives very close to the tree that he ploughed into, and every year people go and thank the tree.
I met a skinhead in Nottingham once, and like a Red Action skinhead who was telling me about like desecrating the memorials or whatever every time they put them up. He's like, we fucking go down there and fucking have it and that. But he's
nice.
Yeah, that fucking thank the tree. The gear stick ought to be like in the punk museum.
That's probably classed as evidence right now. But yeah, Fat Mike should have that. That would be it. Because I think he said that we're not having Screwdriver in there, but I reckon that gear stick or a cutting from the tree. Maybe they could ship a branch over and just have it in there. They've got Joe Strummer's last bag of weed, so, vegetation already has a place there.
They could have Ian Stewart's collection. You can suppose a lot of people who, like, because I know people who are like sort of reformed, like kind of reformed characters who kind of vaguely knew, and apparently had like a big collection of fucking Motown records and stuff. So they could put that in a punk rock museum.
Of course he fucking did.
You hear a lot of talk that he was like a massive fucking shill, and he was just by the end he was just doing it for the fucking money. It makes it worse in some ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Oh, good God. Right. We've got 2 questions left. So, what do you think is NoFX's legacy? What does that look like?
I would say probably it would be several things. So I would say a gateway band for a lot of people, possibly people who who weren't into punk before. For people who their first exposure to punk was like Offspring or Green Day, that might have taken them a bit further down into the kind of fringes of punk. So a good gateway band.
Yeah.
Pop. I think anyone who does a good indie label has built a legacy for themselves, no matter how big or small it is.
Yeah,
that's an important legacy. So doing Fat Wreck was a good thing. I think having the queer representation and the sort of honest, even that it's like, I think one of the things, because it's been like an ongoing thing with Fat Mike, which I can relate to, being a middle-aged queer person who didn't identify as a queer person for a long time. I can sort of relate to the kind of journey that he's been on with the cross-dressing and that kind of thing, and it's been not something that he's had a straightforward handle on, that he seems to sort of like be trying to figure himself out sometimes with it. Do you know what I mean? What he's I relate. So I think that's good to have good middle-aged queer representation in punk.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Also, I think anyone who makes knickers for men has got to be lauded for that. It's got the slogan, it's something like "really piss your dad off" and buy these or something like that. I think a lot of it is just the kind of a gateway into DIY culture and punk culture for people, and getting Snuff back together, I think, as I understand, was the case.
Yeah.
That he got, which was like a be a legacy to Snuff, a brilliant underrated group. And I think general for lot of services to punk rock, I think it'd be you'd have to give particularly Fat Mike his like gold watch or whatever for long service to punk rock. It's been a lot. It's the thing is he's been a doer. The whole band have, but him in particular, he's done stuff. He's always doing stuff, not just NoFX. He did that musical, and he's run a label and a lingerie for men company and stuff. He's always doing stuff. He's said some. He's like you say, he's had his moments of like dickery, but his heart's generally been in the right place throughout, I think, and he's been a character. He's one of your punk icons. I think now he's in your kind of like your sort of Charlie Harper and kind of Steve Jones, sort of like Malcolm out of the rust. He's in your sort of top tier punk icons now. So I think he can, with his head held high, retire now. And he'll be doing something. He'll be doing loads of other stuff because he's not going to sit on his ass doing nothing, is he? He's a bit like a sort of pissed Henry Rollins in that sense. He's always kind of doing. He's always doing stuff. So yeah, that's
those two don't get on.
Yeah. No, I can fucking well imagine. I remember I met Rollins twice. He was lovely the first or the second time. I think I annoyed the fuck out of him unintentionally. But I remember being in a Denmark airport when I was about 19, and I was backpacking, and I was sat in there was these like smoking booths. I was sat in there with Motorhead, as it turned out, and I was talking to. I'd met Lemmy, which was awesome. But then their roadie come up and told them they were sharing a green room with the Rollins band, and Lemmy's reaction was like, "What the fuck?" He goes, "I'm like, do you not get on with him?" He goes, "He's a fucking studio geek, fucking Henry Rollins, like a studio geek, studio geek." He was like, so yeah, that was quite. Rollins is basically right, I think, but he's just like a bit. I was kind of like, I think I just kind of. Was a bit kind of like, because I met him and chatted to him before, and I was sort of like, "You're right, Henry, how you doing?" Henry, and yeah, he was more kind of like, sort of like thought like, "Oh, fucking grumpy Rollins," like, do you know what I mean? It was like not kind of like in a pissed off or intimidated way, sort of like, someone's fucking got out the wrong side. It's basically, I've seen him, I'd given him a DVD, taken it, and I've seen him like a year later. I was walking down Princes Street by Primark, and there he is. I'm like, all right, Henry. He's like, all right. And sort of like, yeah, he goes, before he's like, oh yeah, I got another DVD here, and he's like he goes, on my way from the gym, and I'm like, sort of, sorry, mate, I've never seen you when you've not been like wearing shorts with sweat pissing out, if you like. I feel like a bit of a knob now, and he goes, it's cool. And then he was off, and I was like, oh my fucking God. Upset fucking Henry Rollins. He was fucking lovely. The thing is, you could buy any, even with the vaguest knowledge of him, you know that he's not going to be like fucking, it's not going to be like meeting fucking, do you know what I mean? He is what he is. He's a cantankerous, stroppy little fucker, but that's what makes him great. It's good to see two sides of him, actually. If I meet him a third time, that'll be the charm. That'll be the decider of it. But he's kind of, I think they're very similar, even if they don't like each other. I think he's quite similar to Rollins in a lot of ways. I think
that's possibly why they rub each other up the wrong way a little bit. It might be because they recognise a little bit more of themselves in one another than they'd ideally want to.
Could well be, but he's up there as a service. I would just say general services to as a good punk band, but in particular in the case of Fat Mike, I'd say services to punk rock be the legacy, and he'll be remembered for a long old time. I don't think he's done yet. I think he's got a few especially if he's going to do stand up, he'll be fucking like there'll be some shit's going to come that won't be uneventful.
No, it won't. I think he's got almost a sort of a Stan Lee kind of standing in it, in that he's sort of this ambassador for a thing that people are used to in a way, because Stan Lee was always talking about how brilliant actual comic books are, but it is but more people were going to see the films, or especially these days, than were ever picking up the books. But a lot of people know about Spider-Man because he wouldn't shut up about it. And the Punk Rock Museum thing is sort of Fat Mike's Marvel Comics. Maybe I'm stretching an analogy too.
It's quite a good analogy. It's that thing of like you say, Stan Lee was always like, these comics are fucking brilliant and all the others are fucking shit. What the fuck are you reading DC for? Got the fucking, I put the fucking Hulk in it and a guest appearance. Like, of course. He was always selling it, wasn't he, Stan Lee? It was like a market. It was like Del Boy, the comics artist. He's like, right, here we go. What we're going to have? Fucking have Daredevil here. We'll put fucking the Fantastic Four will come into this. It was like, right, you sold it to me, Stan. But he's kind of like you say, he's kind of like that with punk. He
is very like that.
He clearly likes punk. It's not just he's not they're not one of these bands where they just sort of like, right, here's another fucking tour for like the Ejected or whatever. Let's get the fucking biker jackets out with the garage and get up there and sing I Hate School at the age of like 52, and then like, right, that's at Rebellion, like, right, that's it, back into our coffin for a bit and taking the kids to IKEA. Do you know what I mean? He still properly loves punk and lives like a punk. And also he's someone in there. It's someone in there like late middle age, dyeing their hair. And usually, if I sometimes I think like, I can't be. I'm not 45. I shouldn't be. I think he fucking still dyes his hair blue and he's fucking older than I am. There's still an element of that. Do you know what I mean? It's not he doesn't give a fuck. Why should I give a fuck? Do you know what I mean? Because it's a funny thing when you get to your 40s, being a punk's a weird age because you worry about becoming like the blokes with the golf signs and that in Camden, like your kind of postcard agent that you used to scoff at when you were younger, and you think like, I'm becoming like a old block. I went to see the chat. So someone I cut their off said they'd been to the chat. So like, there's a lot of old school punks there as well. So I could be like, old punks. I thought like, he means people of my age.
He's talking about me.
These people in their 40s like me, as in like old school, like we're teenage, we're like 16 when fucking Dookie come out, like old school punks, rather than like 13 when the first Clash album come out, punks. I'm an old punk. I'm 10 years older than all the old punks I used to knock about when I was 16. Now I've become one of them. There ain't fucking many. There's a lot of them still going, to be fair. There's Chippenham's oldest punk band have just reformed. They're called Radiation Sickness. They formed in 1977 and they supported like the Cure and the Damned when they played in Chippenham, and they supported the Clash at the town hall and stuff. They've just reformed. They're all pushing 70, I think, but they're
cool.
They're doing fucking tremendously. They're about to record do their actual proper album after it's longer than 46 years or something. So
amazing.
Yeah, wow. You never too fucking. It's in you, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely there or not. That's wonderful. We've come to the final question, Will, and it's always an interesting one. Who's your favourite member of NoFX?
Boring answer, but I'm going to have to say Fat Mike for all the reasons I just said. Really, I'm going to have to say that because of his extracurricular activities. I think they're all great musicians. They're a very tight band, even though they're sort of self-deprecating about it. Mm-hmm. They're incredibly tight, and but Fat Mike is he's a great figure in punk. The fact that he sometimes comes off as a bit of a dick is kind of part of it. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the greatest punks do. In many ways. So I think, he's definitely, because he's not the band, they're a band. Do you know what I mean? It's not Fat Mike plus a backing band, but he is the face of the band in some ways. But he's also the face of that kind of, he's the face of punk. It's just, he is bigger than the band in that regard, just because of all the stuff that he does. So definitely him with honourable mentions for good musicianship always. Well, El Jefe as well. You got to like as well for the kind of the sort of loungy, sort of croonery bits and stuff, like the straight edge cover and all of that is all great as well. But I think Fat Mike is got us without doubt. He's who you immediately think of.
Yeah, it's true. Yes, you're only the second person to select Mike. But that's how it is. I think he is divisive because I think some people are less forgiving about the things that you can rightly criticize him for. But but again, that's how it is. But also, it's interesting because he says this stuff and then everyone reports it. So you wouldn't know that he said it if people weren't.
Oh, there's undoubtedly stuff that he said that I'm not aware of. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
but
it's best not to dig too deep sometimes.
Oh god, that's the thing. It's when I think about I remember the Queers. I remember them being a band that were all over Replay Records, big in Maximum Rock and Roll, and he said some anti BLM stuff, didn't he? The bloke out of that, and it's sort of fuck me. I thought they were. I think I've read a thing where he said he was anti-gay marriage. You're in a band called the fucking Queers. You fucking hell, and you're fucking it's the interviews are the fucking. They're the minefield of punk, isn't they? That's where you can properly.
Oh, come a cropper on that one. Well, Ben Weasel as well is that kind of thing. There's something about that kind of Lookout record style sort of pop punk. They call it Ramones core now. It was originally called pop punk, and then everyone started using that to describe anything that was catchy and on the radio. So they had to rebrand as Ramones core, which, if anything, is a slightly better descriptor. But
so Ben Weasel not been I think even back in the early to mid 90s, I remember reading people moaning about him in Maximum Rock and Roll and that. I think he's been a constant he's got I've heard talk of knobby behaviour is the best.
No, I think it started out being outspoken, and then outspokenness didn't cut it, so he started behaving like a jerk a lot of the time. But
again, I don't know what he's done, but I fucking
I think no, it's weird because I think there's a Screeching Weasel song that Fat Mike sings on, like a little guest appearance, and then they had a sort of a big public falling out about something.
What is other band on Honest Dons, the Riverdales?
Yeah, very possibly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably the period when he was asking Mike to guest on Weasel. But I don't know. People change, and not always for the better, I guess. But anyway, thank you ever so much, Will. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It's been really good to be on it.
Oh, I'm really, really pleased.
I love talking about punk. There's not a lot comedy podcast where you get the opportunity.
No, absolutely.
I know it's not a comedy podcast, but do you know what I mean? There's not a lot of podcasts.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Comics, a rare treat.
Yes, by virtue that. Well, that's the thing, is that we went right. We'll interview musicians. Obviously, let's find some comedians who are sort of into punk rock and NoFX. And you have to sift a lot of silt before you find any gold. I've got to tell you that much. We got Sully O'Sullivan, and we got a couple of other people.
Sully will be brilliant.
Oh, we've already had Sully. He was great.
Brilliant.
Yeah, proper good stuff. And outside of that, we've got a few people in the inbox back and forth trying to nail down dates. But we've been leaning heavy on the musicians for this one. But who knows? That's all good. But thank you, Will. You are truly one of the punk rock elites. We'll let Will go now, but Red and I will see you in the outro. We should have warned you to make a cup of tea or something before that started, because that's a lot, isn't it? It's great, and I'm delighted that Will came along, but that is a lot.
I think it's going to be really interesting for listeners who aren't previously familiar with Will. Yeah. I think we're really throwing you in the deep end with this one. But, if you have found them interesting, if you're curious about what they do check them out. They've got a pretty serious back catalogue of shows. I know they've recorded and released a lot of stuff through Go Faster Stripe, so there is digital stuff available. But if you like what you hear, do go and check them out.
Go Faster Stripe, which contains a lot of great UK comedy that is not particularly mainstream. Some really, really interesting stuff out there, a little more left field. I think Will has at least 3 releases on there. I've got 2 of them on DVD from when they were released a long time ago. And I think you can get each of those digital downloads for about £5 UK. I don't know what that would translate to outside of the UK, but they are great. All of them are really, really great. And a lot of them deal with the roads less traveled, the more subcultural aspects, a lot of small town stuff. In the world of punk rock, you hear a lot about small towns from a US perspective. If you want to hear a musicless small town ode, you could do a lot worse. From a UK perspective, you could do a lot worse than hearing about the peculiarities of Wiltshire and Chippenham in particular from Will. So pleased we got them on.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone with Care Bears tattooed on their knuckles gets a big thumbs up from me.
In Old English as well, yeah. It's in the Old English script. It's there's I think I saw Will's show about tattoos, or did they, or some sort of working. Anyway, there's a lot of tattoo related stuff. It's just, there's so much there for Will, and great stuff as well. So much information. I think a lot of people might get a sense of nostalgia even if they don't know these places that Will is talking about. But the journey is of finding oneself subculturally, sort of national identity and all the rest of it. I think that rings true for a lot of people, particularly if you only find out that you're queer in your 40s. It's one of those things, isn't it? So a late in life, they used to call it, didn't they? But cool. What we got coming up? Anything new or exciting?
I'm doing a lot of live streams at the moment on Twitch. Cool. My channel is Fruitcake UK. Fruitcake spelled FROOT cake. And it's named after the agency that I run, which represents LGBT comedians. And yeah, as I've said earlier in the intro, we've been playing a lot of Gotham Nights, patrolling the streets of Gotham and keeping them safe.
I do like that you've spelt fruit the way a company would do if they have fruit flavors but no fruit content in their products. It's like
It was just the domain that was available.
Sure. And that matters a lot these days. Cool. I've probably got some stuff going on. I don't know. We've got we've got some really, really cool stuff coming up. So keep your eyes peeled on the Instagram. Follow us there, and punkrockelitepodcast@gmail.com if you want to get in touch. If anything Will or either of Red and I touched upon in this episode sparked a thought, a memory, or a reaction, let us know about it, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Punk Rock Elite. It was a Pick Scraped and Fruitcake co-production by Eddie French and Red Redmond. If you're not following us on Instagram or subscribe to the podcast, please do. The main theme and production was done by Eddie French. Please contact us at punkrockelitepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.